Hello and welcome to the very first episode of QA Q&A. I'm your host Shweta, and in this show we'll be exploring the exciting world of quality and testing. Here we'll ensure the highest quality for your products and services by inviting eminent industry professionals and asking them burning questions about everything quality. Today I have with me Marie Drake, who is currently a developer advocate at K6.io and Grafana Labs. She is known for her informative tech talks and is also a passionate tech blogger at testingwithmarie.com. Her knowledge sharing doesn't just stop there. She is also an online course instructor with Ministry of Testing and Test Automation University. Since Marie is an accessibility specialist, we'll be asking her questions of her favorite accessibility tools, processes, related practices, Ali standards, her take on AI and accessibility, and a lot more. Marie, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Shweta. Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm just really excited to be. I didn't realize that I was the first person to attend this Q&A. So I'm just really excited to open up this show and talk about, a lot of things about our industry and share some experiences to the attendees, to the listeners or watchers of the show.
We are equally excited and honored to have you as our first guest on the show, Marie. Thank you. Thank you so much once again for joining us.
Thank you.
So let's dive in.
Yes, let's do
So,
it.
Marie, how did you come across digital accessibility?
Yeah, so I guess it wasn't early on in my career. So when I started my career as a software tester almost 10 years ago, I didn't know anything about accessibility. I thought that it was a very niche route. And so I really didn't get into it. The main reason I got or how I got into digital accessibility was I was part of a team. This was on my previous role, and we wanted to create a design system solution to our users. And one of the key focus in providing a design system is to make sure that our components are accessible as possible. So that's how it all started. And it was really an awakening call as well because I had like a temporary injury on my right wrist. So it was very difficult to use a mouse. And that's when I started to look into, web accessibility, ways on how we can, not just use a mouse, but use like, other ways of input devices such as keyboard. And it really started from there. So when I'm curious about something, I spend a lot of time trying to, understand the reasoning as to why we need to have accessibility in place. What are the tools? I even did this 30 days of accessibility challenge, which was it's like an activity from Ministry of Testing, and I really learned a lot as to what is accessibility, why do we have a lot of inaccessible websites, and pretty much how to get started with it. Yeah.
Oh, fantastic. So, opportunity clubbed with empathy, I should say. So
Yes.
lovely.
Yeah.
And, yeah. And so, is it possible for folks to start early with accessibility testing?
Definitely. I actually think it works much better if we try to talk about accessibility as earlier as possible. So even if you haven't delivered any products yet, it's better to have that conversations going on as early as possible, because one of the myths that people think about accessibility is that it's just the responsibility of testers, but actually it's the responsibility of everyone. So even if you're a product owner, even if you're a developer or content writer, we should all be thinking about accessibility. And so the earlier the conversations are in terms of how should we embed accessibility into our projects, I think the better it is, because once you leave accessibility in terms of all the efforts, right at the end, it's going to become, quite difficult to manage. And the really important thing is to get that buy-in, to start embedding that culture of accessibility as earlier on as possible. So one of the key examples that you can, like try and share with your team is like you can even share like stories from, people who are disabled, just see how they're actually getting impacted by, if a website or if an application that they're using is not accessible, how is it impacting their day-to-day lives? Because I think, like you said, if you put that empathy first, then you'll be in a much better position just to start these conversations earlier on, because it's really important that we not only access it, but a lot of people as well from different disabilities, even like invisible disabilities, they should be able to access it as earlier on.
Beautiful, beautiful point there, Marie. And so let's move on to more testing specific and technical questions. What parameters or factors would people need to consider to estimate accessibility related efforts?
Mhm. I guess with this, like in terms of like estimation, like it's quite difficult to give a very exact, number. So you really have to understand, I guess, what the product is, understand who your users are, understand which user journeys are the most important, and what would happen if, for example, any of the high priority features are inaccessible. Like just think from, again, from a user perspective. Then I guess once you have that data in place, estimating accessibility efforts should be you should be able to derive it from that data. But I guess in terms of any additional tips, if you're working on like a new feature or a new story, when you're doing things like the sprint refinement session or three amigos or the story shaping sessions, make sure that you talk about accessibility during those sessions and try to bring up, questions like what would happen if a user's mouse is not working, or they much prefer using their keyboard. We need to make sure then that our feature is accessible from a keyboard perspective. So start thinking of those questions, and then try to get accessibility as part of the definition of done as well. So rather than clubbing everything right at the end, you're incorporating your accessibility efforts per each feature, or per each like user story.
Nice. I think that's again a excellent point. Consider your user base and the most useful or used user journeys. So, Bari, since the world is talking about accessibility and there are many companies who are trying to adopt accessibility, what tips would you give for people who would want to, who are still in the mid of their project and are looking to adopt accessibility?
I guess in terms of adding it in the middle of a project, I would, just start very small. You'd be amazed as to how much of these accessibility issues are low hanging fruit. So you can tackle like small issues, even if it's in the middle of a project already. So things like, are we actually using the correct HTML tags? So are we using the semantic tags? Because if I give a specific example, let's say that if you're creating a new component and you're not using the correct attributes for the HTML tag, or you're not using the correct like ARIA labels, all those things, you can easily just change it to the correct one, and using the correct HTML tags actually will provide you with the correct accessibility like guidance. So a screen reader will be able to read the correct tags properly as opposed to just using a bunch of like div tags. So I would start like really early, and I won't try and be overwhelmed by all of the different types of areas where we can improve accessibility. So you just have to start small. You can also just try and, tackle the most important page. You can use a lot of different accessibility like extensions that can give you a very quick feedback as to what accessibility issues that you might have, and just start talking about it, to your team. I think the earlier you can have these conversations, the better it will be, as I said. And even if you're in the middle, or even if you're at the end of the project already, like it's never too late to start, having all these accessibility improvements, because every single thing that you make, it will actually be like better already for someone else out there. So start small, and just, yeah, tackle it as you go along as well.
So you spoke of extensions. Do you have any preferred tool stack for accessibility, for the entire digital horizon? Speaking of
Yeah.
web, mobile, documents.
Yep. So I've spoken about accessibility tools on like my previous talks, and I've always tried to differentiate them into like different categories. So you've got tools that require our assistance. So anything that's, anything that will include, our sort of like assistance, I group them in that category. So things like using a keyboard, using a screen reader, those are still very important tools. And a lot of people actually think that, accessibility tools is just all about using the extensions and the automated, stuff. But just try and use your keyboard, and you'll be surprised as to how much accessibility issues you find. So there's that category. The next one is the semi-automated tools in the form of browser extension. So this is very useful in providing that quick feedback, because you can just install the extension, run an audit of your page, and then it will give you a rundown of all the accessibility issues. So popular ones out there, and these are the ones that I've used as well. You've got Axe from DQ. Wave as well is a very like popular tool. There's also accessibility insights, and then there's a lot of extensions that can also mimic like different color blindness, like disability. So if you want to see how your component or how your page will look like from a wide array of color like disabilities like color blindness, then you can use various extensions for that. And then if you really want to take your accessibility efforts into the next level, you can look at the automated tools and get it included as part of your continuous integration pipeline. So things that I've used, again, these are all based from like the same library. So you've got Cypress Axe, which is based from Axe if you're using Cypress. They also have other libraries depending on which testing framework you're using. So if you're using Jest, if you're using Selenium, if you're using WebDriver IO, or any other testing libraries, they have integration for those. And then even though we all have these accessibility tools, like you still have to do a lot of the accessibility testing by yourself. Don't just rely on these tools that will provide you with that automated results, because there's still a lot of things that you still need to check, manually, or by yourself. So use these tools as a complement to your actual testing efforts.
Okay, well, users, that's a wise piece of advice there. Marie says that don't rely completely on tools, and human intervention is absolutely needed when it comes to accessibility.
Yes.
So, moving on to next question, Marie, what is your take on AI and accessibility?
Yeah, this is a very interesting subject, because I guess not just with accessibility, but with things in general. Because I've been seeing a lot of posts, a lot of threads about Chat GPT, on how it's very smart, and it actually provides you with like real factual information. But I think the main thing that I would like to say around this is, AI is not going to solve all of our accessibility problems, because there's a lot of like different ways that a user uses your product. So with AI tools, with AI like algorithms, you have to train it, you have to give it like historical data, and like let it learn from all these different models. But we as humans, we always evolve in how we interact with certain like tools, with certain like products. So I definitely think that, yeah, AI can play a huge part, but I don't think it will solve a lot of the accessibility issues out there. Maybe it can try and find like the basic issues, such as if your page or if your components has the correct color contrast, for example. So it can find those issues. It can maybe check if you're using the correct HTML values. But then you still need to like you said, like a while ago, human intervention is still like very key. I don't know if other people would agree that AI is like the sort of like best solution, or not. But just from my personal perspective, I don't think it's gonna try and solve all of our accessibility issues. I still believe in that human touch when it comes to accessibility testing.
I second that undoubtedly.
Yeah.
Okay. So there are so many standards and compliances. You talk of WCAG, you talk of
Mhm.
ADA, right? So how do people stay up to date with happenings in the accessibility world? Can you share some tips with our audience?
Yeah, I guess with this, so I do follow a lot of my news, from Twitter. I don't know what's happening with Twitter now, if it's still gonna stay, but I still find it a very valuable source of information. So I follow a lot of accessibility experts and accessibility advocates at Twitter, and that's where I, sort of keep in touch as well with what's happening, like what's new. And at the same time, there's a lot of like if you just look at like the W3Cs, like up to date documentation, they also like provide what is the most recent like guidelines. I think at the moment now, it's starting to move from a different guidelines. So there's like a bunch of new rules that we need to start like being like used to. So I guess with this, it's like same with networking, right? Like the better you get in touch with people, the better it is for you to be informed. So I would recommend that if there's like a social media tool that you follow, you can also use it not just for posting, I guess, like other stuff, but you can also use it to keep yourself well informed. I've given Twitter as an example. Every time I follow the hashtag Ali, or A11Y, they do have a lot of information there that's like really useful. So I recommend following that hashtag to people who are also on Twitter. And I guess from like LinkedIn as well, you can also just use the same hashtag and see what other people are posting about accessibility.
Again, a very valid and wise tip for the audience. Leverage the power of community, folks.
Yes, definitely.
So, speaking of Twitter, and we connected for the first time on Twitter, and that's where I've been following you and your posts about your fitness regime, then your tech talks, and also Gabby. I really enjoy
Yes.
those posts. So, so, so how what is Gabby into? Is she like a fitness freak like her mom, or does she
Gosh,
aspire to be a techie?
I mean, I guess she's just your typical 5 year old. She really loves to draw. She's like very creative. So, for Christmas, we just bought her a lot of like arts and crafts because some of the stuff that she's done, like she's doing it much better than me. So I really want to focus in like, trying to grow that like skill because she's really like very creative. If I'm doing home workouts, sometimes she would join me. So if it's like the cardio ones where, we're just jogging on the spot or doing like jumping jacks, then yes, she would join me. Um, in terms of tech talks, she hasn't participated for a while, but before she would make an appearance. She would, sing in the background, but I think now she's much better. Plus, she's also at school, so it's much more manageable now with doing all these talks.
Thanks for sharing that. And with that, we've come to the end of the first episode of QA Q&A.
Thank you so
Thank you,
much. Yeah.
everybody, for joining us. Thank you, Marie. And we hope you and our audience enjoyed the discussion about digital accessibility testing. We are grateful to Marie for sharing her expertise and insights with us, and we hope you were able to take away valuable information. We appreciate your support and feedback. If you have any questions, don't forget to comment below this video and we'll try our best to answer everyone. For more QA content, don't forget to follow us on Twitter, LinkedIn, and Instagram. We look forward to hearing from you and bringing you more engaging content on quality and testing. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time on QA Q&A.